I know it seems like I'm beating a dead horse. But you know, that's the way a lot of people look at the gospel. They don't want to hear it. Most people don't want to hear the gospel. They just don't want to hear it. It is like a humdrum to them. It's just somebody sitting over there beating a drum. And it bores them. It doesn't seem like there's life in it for them. It's something that they don't believe, so therefore it is fruitless for them. It is, as the scripture says, foolishness to them. And I'll say this, I know, or I thank God that He helps me. I'll put it that way. Because I know that I'm not the best speaker, orator. I lack. But my hope and my prayer is that He makes up for the lack. That's what I pray. I pray that He would take the words of my mouth and cause them to land where He wants them to. And the junk that comes out my mouth, I pray He would scratch that off out of people's hearing. But anyone, anybody can say Jesus is Lord. Anybody. Somebody might pull that scripture out and say, well, nobody can say Jesus is Lord except by the Spirit of God. Absolutely the truth. No one can say Jesus is Lord except by the Spirit of God. Those who say it from a pure heart, a heart that has been regenerated, born again, changed, new creature, that person can say Jesus is Lord by the Spirit. But you know, just anybody and everybody that says Jesus is Lord, is it a true confession of the heart? You know, Matthew 15:18, I think I did a video on that verse right there. It says that, these people honor me, these hypocrites, those who put on a mask and perform, who have a show of Christianity. These people, these hypocrites, they honor me with their lips. He said, but their heart is far from me. You see, so anybody can say Jesus is Lord, but is it a true confession of their heart? Or is it just babbled words out of their mouth in order to gain? What would they be wanting to gain? Well, whatever it is, it's in vain. I know that. Because over there in Matthew 15, He says, in vain do they worship me. But in vain, mind you, they do this for their gain. What? What gain would they be looking for? Well, recognition from the folk that they're acting like a Christian around. Recognition from men, or, at least a wink from God when needed. That's why they say Jesus is Lord. Hey, me and you. How does those guys do it? They put John 3:16 on their helmet. Or on their bump. They have a bumper sticker, and yet people, when they're going down the road, they see that bumper sticker, but when they go by them, that person probably shoot them a bird or something like that. I see that all the time. I'm a truck driver by trade, and I see a lot of things and a lot of bumper stickers. They got their church name on car, but they're cutting people off and acting like crazy people, you know. You know, they do it, they call Jesus Lord, at least, at minimum, to get the benefits. You know, like, and we're talking about preachers, pastors, teachers, false. They do it to get the benefits, you know, and these don't have to be preachers. They can be just regular lay people, so-called, you know, just the sheep. But they do it for money. They do it for fame. You know, they do it for power, influence. You know, people call him Lord and beg and plead just to get a healing from him. You know, to get secret knowledge. To get entrance into heaven. That's all I want. Just give me entrance into heaven. But in their heart, they suppress the truth. They resist him in their heart. They resent him in their heart. They reject him. They harden their heart toward him. They have no fellowship with him, no relationship with him. They call him Lord, and they don't do what he says. Luke 6:46. You know, the great teacher is teaching in Matthew 7, where we read those verses in the last video. And the comparisons are and contrasts, they're astounding. There's a lot of them. You know, there's a wide gate and a narrow gate. There's two gates. And there's two paths, ways or paths, you know, the broad and the narrow. There's two crowds, the few and the many. There's two destinies going on in these verses, you know, life and destruction. There's two trees, you know, them that produce good fruit and them that produce bad fruit. And then we get to verse 24 through 27, and I'll read it to you. It says, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them may be compared to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against that house. And yet it did not fall, for it had been founded on rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds slammed against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall." Boy, there's a lot there. I don't know that I got time to get into it, but these words are addressed to everybody who says, "Lord, Lord," all who confess with their mouth to him, "Lord, Lord." It's addressed to those who say they hear his words, and to them who confront Satan, you know, to them who do ministry, and to them who do miracles. So we're just going to have to talk more about this in a later video. But do your own homework. Take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt.